And what? No.
Too true.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. Question. How come we can't hear?
Because yeah, she's. But she
what
can hear you. Yeah, I'll message her.
To.
Yeah, she's saying that she can hear you.
She's also on.
Nothing for her.
Hi, ladies.
Moj,
Yeah.
how you doing, big guy?
I'm good, and you?
You trying to live?
I'm just trying to live.
Smokes.
I'm good, man.
You trying to live,
I'm
man?
excited about it.
Okay, I think
We need to make this a feature.
get the regular. Yeah.
Yeah, we should really create something amazing
You guys are gonna come out stuff and everybody's gonna be like, they're so smart.
for the people to.
Exactly.
Yeah, man.
Okay, you guys want to first tell us what the announcement from MPC means for us as human beings? What does 25 points cut in for the average man, and that's economics in the kingdom?
I think first and foremost, I just like to invite us here.
You're welcome.
And giving an opportunity just to actually just share this.
And the people that it's your second time here.
Yeah.
Yes, too true. I think first and foremost, I think it's important to note that there was a 25 basis points cut. That's jargon for saying 0.25%. with on BL rate, which is our local rate.
Okay.
So what that really means that your CBL rate normally links to your prime rate.
Okay.
Prime is your benchmark rate, which is a rate of 5%, which is pretty much to record lows, not a record low. With this, it means it's gone down to 8.25.
Okay.
To put it in context, historically we see it sitting far-fetched sitting at 15 or 12.
Sheesh.
Recently, just before we had this cut, you were talking about a prime rate sitting at 0.25, 0.75%. So it creates an accommodation that allows, let's say, the average household or business to say, oh, even may have a bit debt load. Here is a bit of relief that could help me get through this pretty tough environment. At the end of the day, it's not necessarily a matter of how much you have sitting in the bank. If less and what you're not selling, you're not necessarily making the sale, making your income, you're not making your profit, how then do you keep up with what would be your repayments and your repayment?
Sure.
So this is one that's actually a helping hand in order to get through this particular.
Got you.
Yeah.
That's a really, really cool, succinct way of putting it. Thank you, Mojo. Smokes, do you want to give us some of the other outcomes of the MPC? What else is noteworthy from Dr. Matlanya's address yesterday?
So two things happened. Khotso has touched on the cut in the rates.
Yeah.
The other one was the net international reserve increased from about $530 million to $550.
Okay.
Essentially, that was done ideally in terms of keeping sure of the Maluti.
For sure.
Maluti and the Rand are pegged together.
They stay pegged, yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So these are things that the MPC or the CBL has to constantly be looking at to make sure that you maintain that interest rate parity.
Right.
Because you can't do one thing and not expect it to impact on the other.
Sure.
Yeah.
What is the impact of the SIRB, the Reserve Bank, having cut their interest as well? Was it last week or the week before?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any coincidence that we had to do ours?
I think Mojo, you're best to actually.
I think, let's put it this way. I think there's the common monetary area. Right now, Lesotho is CMA, which is part of the common monetary area. So you find that it tends to be aligned within that particular framework. That's not to say you can never have an area whereby any of the other counterparties then sits slightly above or below where the SA benchmark sits, depending on how they see their book. But really what you need to do is you have to move together, because you are pretty much selling yourselves to a world regional, as a region to speak, by virtue of using the same currency.
Sure.
So that has filter effects, and in order to keep that in check, you have to have a certain amount of hard currency that then backs that particular peg.
Okay.
I think something that's a bit less known would be, I think if you really look at that particular statement, there is a bit of positive news that actually came out, whereby they stated that with the current reserves that they have right now, they're sitting at roughly 4.7 months worth of import cover,
okay,
of which the minimum that you'd expect to have in order to maintain a peg is 3 months. If you look not too far, a year or two back, you find that our import cover went down as 3.3 months. So you have seen some kind of gradual recovery on that side. I think sometimes we all look at some of the negative things that happen, but nobody really says when there's some good yards that have actually been drowned out by those who actually have to make those decisions, and it's not easy.
I hope the people that are listening are understanding what Mojo is saying. I just said, mwah, mwah, mwah. It's like being in Charlie Brown's math teachers. Smokes.
Yeah.
Give us a brief economic view of global
of what's
yeah,
it's
yeah.
bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good thought.
Yeah. It's terrible.
A real bad Michael Jackson.
Correct. So
Yeah.
if you take about a month ago, the expectations from the global is pretty. We can seal that in to say the whole world is going through a recession.
Yeah.
From a numbers perspective, you're looking at about a decrease of about 5% that is expected somewhere.
Shish, okay.
Whereas usually, as a world, we like to go forward, so
Yeah.
we like to see positive growth.
Yeah.
So a recession basically means you've got 2 quarters of negative growth.
Yeah.
And the moment you had, then you're officially in a recession.
Technical recession.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the US, they're going through it.
Yeah.
We've seen the negative growth come through.
Sure.
The European Union, we've seen that come through.
Sure.
Asia is happening. So Sub-Saharan Africa and the emerging markets,
Yeah.
you tend to find that they exhibit positive growth. Now is that growth has
Because of the basis.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But right now it's kind of slowed down, and you're looking at the rebound. I think the last number that I read was about 3%.
Okay.
You haven't seen that in a very long time.
Oof.
So in context, where exactly are we? We're looking worse than 2008.
No!
So when you ask yourself what happened in 2008, in the mortgage-backed crisis,
Yeah.
it took us about 3 years to get out of it.
Yeah, Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae.
Exactly. So essentially, that's where we are. So what governments are doing to respond is to stimulate the economy, right? So COVID has hit us bad.
Yeah.
We're going to slow down and stimulate the economy.
Right.
So on one hand, you've got the monetary committee, which is what has been happening yesterday and the previous month. So they've been cutting rates. So rates have been coming down.
Sure.
And the idea is so that more money can come into the system.
So the more I borrow, the more I can spend. The more I can
Exactly.
spend, I can stimulate the
Exactly.
economy.
So you've got the MPC, which is the central bank.
Sure.
But then you've got as well, you need what's called fiscal policy. So that also has to stimulate the economy. So fiscal policy is the actual government expenditure.
Right.
And then this time is how do you help the economy through monetary policy.
These two things have got to come in.
Exactly. Lesotho is fortunate. We're not hearing what's happening on the fiscal side of things. Nakasek is still to come out and say we're going to do A, B, C, D. And that's what I was asking you earlier.
Yeah.
What is the statement? And we're expecting the 1st of August.
Okay, so we've got Nakasek coming on next week. So they'll come and hopefully answer some of these questions. I'll make sure that I pose that one
Yes.
first.
Yes.
So that we can...
Because that is huge. As much as the central bank can do all these tools, unless it has a complement with the government doing something,
Right.
then you're going to find yourself in a very tough position. Now, Khotso mentioned over there's some positives, like import cover has 4 months, which is brilliant. However, we talked about cutting rates means we have more money, as in they lend us more money, right? Or they could reduce your burden. The one negative thing is private sector borrowing has gone down. So that's not filtering through.
We're not feeling it.
We're not feeling it.
Mojo, you're at the bank, man. Y'all ain't feeling it?
No, I think at the end of the day, it's there's one of the things that you really do not want as a lending entities get to a point whereby you're over-indebting somebody to a point whereby they can't repay.
Sure.
Especially when you make growth.
Yeah.
Now, if you don't have anything that is tangible to slot into, the idea of money is great, but to be quite honest, it's not the solution.
Did you say the idea of...
The idea of having money.
The idea of increasing money.
It's a bunch of women sat there going, what? Money is great. Yeah.
Yeah, but the idea of having access to that funding is great. But the thing is, then how do you actually do that in a sustainable way? And that's where I think the part that he keeps on referring to, that whereby he says, what is the fiscal stimulus that we're looking at that perhaps can actually reinvigorate or bring some kind of activity, albeit at the back of COVID-based initiatives, or whatever sectors that we may actually look at that are ailing and have deemed critical to have dealt with this crisis,
Sure.
then perhaps the time to say perhaps some of this capex should be looked more at actually or strengthening these protectors given their importance. So there's no, as much as the situation may be, always some kind of good that can come out should you decide to use that accommodative environment well.
Sure. Nothing is all bad, just as nothing is all good.
Exactly.
Okay.
We gotta have a plan though.
We gotta have a plan.
We gotta have a fiscal. You see what he's saying? You gotta have something to plug that money into.
Sure.
So when you look at how the economy of Lesotho is structured from a GDP perspective, you have to know, fine, if I've got so much in mining, I've got so much in construction, so much in retail, when all that money's in the system, you gotta be able to channel it
It's gotta go somewhere.
to those pillars. And
I can't
that's how you get the economy moving.
It
So
can't just
that's
sit.
why it's so interesting to and wait and say, okay, no, fine. Nakosek, Batrohi.
Yeah.
That's what I'm interested in.
That's amazing. Mojo. I was gonna call you Smojo, when in fact your name is Mojo. What are the trends? People obviously borrowing less. I don't know why I said obviously, but are people less? Let's say over this COVID period specifically. What are the consumers specifically to since COVID-19 landed?
To be honest, I think we're all trying to feel it out as we go along. Because until there is a firm...
I need you to speak into the mic, Mojo.
Yes, at the end of the day, we're all trying to figure out exactly what the next step is.
Sure.
For instance, when this entire ordeal began, the expectation was that you were going to have slow activity or very anemic, very low activity until the second half of the year.
Okay.
We're expecting Q3 to Q4 some kind of recovery. But as it's unfolded, now more than ever, do we start hearing people saying, no, we're looking more at 2021 for what would be tangible recovery. So it's a moving target.
Yeah, okay.
So you can't necessarily just jump in, A. And number two, you need to have some kind of guidance with regards to what the recovery is going to look like.
Sure.
Yeah, I think I can't really say.
If you look at the trends globally over this period, you will notice COVID has hit all the sectors that rely on interactions amongst human beings.
Sure.
So
anything
the hardest,
social.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the hardest hit is like leisure and tourism.
Yeah.
Or leisure as American.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's down, right?
Yeah.
Across.
Yeah.
All right. Also, stuff like trade is down.
Yeah.
The one variable or the one industry that is kind of like doing well is the fact that everybody's sitting at home.
Sure.
So food and beverages.
Yeah.
So I find that food and beverages is actually pretty doing well globally.
But even in that food and bev, that doesn't include hospitality because restaurants are not.
No.
Restaurants are closing down en masse.
So leisure, tourism, and hospitality. That is the hardest.
All
hit.
coming short. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So the beauty about not the beauty. What you tend to find in an economy where a lot of information is disseminated and you can get it easily, you can easily tell which economies are getting hit.
Sure.
Right. So now, when you see, and I hate to say this, but when you look at the plan, the COVID plan for South Africa, they have funds specific for sector economy. There's a tourism fund. There's this fund.
Yeah.
There's that. So because they know exactly how much they need to plug in to those sectors to stimulate it.
Yeah.
So when you bring it closer to Makai, to home, let's go back to 2000 of last year.
Yeah.
What were the keys that the economy was looking at? There was mining, there was construction.
Yeah.
All right, and there was a lot of SACU revenue funds that were supposed to go up. So now the question is, where is that now?
Where is that?
Where is mining? Where is Budihadu construction?
Yeah.
There's not much SACU traveling in between the borders.
Yeah. There's no inter-thingy border.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just to add to that, I think
I don't like when you do it. I don't like when you guys agree. I want more sparks. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Continue.
But just to add to that, I think just to bring it closer to home,
Yeah.
it is right. The hardest hit actually has been more on the manufacturing side.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you have textile industries that are net exporters.
Yeah.
And now if demand slows on the other end, and right now you have effectively closed down that very same factory, what then happens to what is the currency earner or the activity or income you used to see then?
Sure.
So that's one. The second most hit is your primary, and your primary is being mining.
Yeah.
Now I'm referring to these particular ones primarily because they are the anchors of this economy.
Yeah.
And now construction and mining. Construction at the back of LHDA Phase 2,
Yeah.
or HWP. And you have mining, given the fact that I think that's been our mainstay and that's helped us through
The worst of times.
The worst of times
Yeah.
in recent.
Sure.
So those two pretty much are on the back foot. What has been very surprising is that services, if you look at some of the reports, services are the least impacted. I guess at the end of the day, you have the luxury of actually logging on and working
Continuing.
remotely, and
Yeah.
continuing and
Yeah.
sending your documents.
Sure.
It may be a bit adjustment in terms of oversight, but nonetheless, you can keep on moving.
Right.
I think what I do wonder about is at the end of the day, a large range of services are in service to what is sitting in the secondary sectors.
Yeah.
Now, what then happens when that starts waning? Because then who are you servicing?
Exactly.
So it's, the knock-on
balancing act
effects
that-
are not necessarily obvious at all times. So that will come with a lag. But if it ends as anticipated, then at the end of the day, you may find that the net impact won't be as bad. But the longer it goes on, the worse it's going to be.
I'm thinking about my barber, my haircut guy. He obviously foot traffic has slowed to a halt. It happens that we're currently in what is like scenario, we're in orange, we're in amber, so he has to be closed anyway. But he's going to open at some point, not too long. But at that point, I know for myself, I'm not going to be comfortable to go back to him, until such time as he can show me, I don't know, something.
Correct.
That, yeah. What's going to happen to those guys, the bread and butter economies, the everyday kind of, that's how am I living, money in, money out sectors?
It's going to be carnage. Sorry to put it so bluntly.
I think you got the big time.
It's going to be carnage. Now, the one thing about our economy is we're closed in Africa, so we depend 90%. Is it 90% goods and services, right? So when you close that economy, it means we have to find some kind of services amongst ourselves.
Yeah,
Exactly. So now when we close that, because of a hard lockdown, because the numbers are getting crazy, then you're in trouble. Because
it doesn't get better.
no,
it
it won't. It won't get better at all, because then you have to react now in terms of how do we create an economy where we are feeding ourselves
Yeah.
on some kind of level, and we are consuming what we are creating. And if we can export, even better. So we have to start thinking along those lines. And you have to create a system such that when the bank or the CBL cuts rates, that can filter in immediately.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what we're missing,
Yeah.
high one, because that filter, it drags,
Yeah.
right? It does drag. And fiscal policy usually comes in to help close a bit of that gap so that you don't have to wait too long to see the benefits of something like that. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be bad. Speaking as somebody who's had to shut down 2 businesses,
Yeah.
I can only imagine how people are going to survive if we have to go to a hard lockdown. And I put something up on Facebook a couple of weeks ago, and I got a lot of backlash.
I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Because some of it was called it vitriolic, and I wasn't sure that there was space for the vitriol. I didn't understand why the vitriol exhausted. Just to talk about that post, you spoke about how we need to think about a hard-ish lockdown, and somebody said you're typing that from a point of privilege. Can you just explain to us what your thinking was in terms of why you said hard lockdown?
First of all, there wasn't a concrete plan that was initiated.
This was prior to
This was prior to it. We were all debating what's going on.
Yeah.
We're 3 months, arguably 3 months into this thing. We had just a bit over a month of a lockdown, and there was no plan put in place.
The lockdown did absolutely nothing for us.
It did absolutely nothing.
We didn't build capacity in that time.
Exactly.
If anything, what we might have done was helped in thinking the curve. Yeah.
So a hard lockdown, I did not specify the time, because you can't specify a time on a hard lockdown when you don't know what the pulse of the economy looks like.
Sure.
So you're going to do a hard lockdown for 14 days until you get some form of a response, or the government comes out and says we're going to do A, B, C, D.
Right.
All right, but essentially what you need to do, what NACOSEC needs to do is to give confidence to the market. Okay, this is what we're going to do, this is the plan and it's going to work. Then all those things will start working together.
They'll start to harness each other.
Exactly.
I want to ask you one last question before we go on break at 6 o'clock. The CBL had an economic report that was published in December. Where are we relative to that?
I think I touched on that. One, so the main drivers, a bit more, but the ones that I remember that stand out, mining and construction, SACU revenue, and textiles, right?
Textile.
So now the question is where are they're
everybody's behind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, it's even worse than we're thinking of 2008, where we really will get to 2011.
We're in the second quarter now, are we?
The second quarter.
And it's not gone well.
It's not gone well. When you talk to some textile firms, you see a bit of research happening, especially to the guys exporting to South Africa. They're seeing because South Africa has opened up. But the other guys, I suspect that industry is ailing a bit. And then that was delayed, right? We had the issue with South Africans coming across the border, the issue with what. So that is also hit hard. Already it was delayed in December, so now it's going to be delayed even more. And then, I mean, we're talking about them diamonds, right?
Yeah.
Precious metals. Where's precious metals right now? Nobody's really buying those. So in my view,
Pete Joe, do you have anything to add to that before we bills?
Yes, I do. I do acknowledge that that's happening, but
yes, you disagree.
I think quietly they are trying to figure out exactly how they can start to work. And I think, just to be fair, I don't think any have all the answers at once.
For sure.
We're going to have to figure this out along. We find out what drivers are. And if we fully then use this time to learn where our deficiencies are as an economy, then I think, you may come stronger after this particular crisis. It doesn't seem like it now, but I think it's a reality check. I would explain why a reality check, but you're about to...
In my back, you can tell me why it's a reality check, so that I don't get checked on live on air.
And then the last time, remember, we talked whether we have the right man in the right place.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna come back to that. It's 1800 hours on the Big Time Sky Alpha HD. It's the Big Time with Fire. And Gambia have gone off back at the end of this Mojo and Smokes. They are the revenge of this.